everyone. I'm Karyn Foley. We're here at the Calabasas Library for Authors Night. Today our guest is Lisa S. Johnson, who wrote an extraordinary book called 108 Rock Star Guitars. And it comes in a beautiful, beautiful gift setting, and I've been looking through the book, and it not only has extremely interesting text, fascinating facts about musicians you know about, but it also has lovely photographs as well. This book is, I think, kind of a backstage pass to see and learn about all the magnificent instruments that belong to the legendary musicians, the rock musicians primarily, correct? Who plays guitar. Mm-hmm. And I understand you've traveled backstage hallways of concert venues and even into the private homes of these artists. Can you tell me something about that, how you did that, how you made arrangements to, and how they received you?
Well, sure. Well, this has been a 17-year project, so in the beginning days, I would request through artist management if I could photograph a certain artist's guitar, and predominantly I would photograph them backstage before concerts, either before or after a sound check. And then later on into the project, I started being able to actually go to artists' homes and photograph their guitars at their houses, because it was just easier to go to where their guitars resided. And being in California a lot of the time, many of these artists live in California, so it was nice to be able to go and spend some time with them and meet with them personally and find out about the guitars from them personally, and be able to photograph their guitar in their home setting, which made it very personal. Did you go all around the country? Mainly in California, New York. I've been to Arizona, to Philadelphia, several places in the United States, and then also in Europe as well. How did you set up appointments? Did you have an agent set them up? Did you contact them personally, and how were you received by them? Well, in the beginning, I did all of my own requests. It's only been in the last 2 years that I've had help getting requests through my publicist. But I would contact their management companies or their record labels and just tell them who I was and that I was putting this book together and that I wanted to have their artist's guitar in the book. And most often I was received quite well. They were enthusiastic because I would send them photographs of other guitars that I'd already photographed so they could see the quality of my work, and also other guitars that had already agreed to be in the book. And so most often I was received quite well. Sometimes they may not have understood the project, or they weren't interested, and so I would receive no response. So how you want to call that being received, I don't know, but eventually, over time, I wouldn't give up, and I would keep requesting, especially for those guitars that I really, really wanted, that I had not been able to get a response from. I just kept asking, and eventually they said yes. But it took a long time, and you didn't flag in your desire to complete this project, did you? Well, it's a true passion of mine. I love music, and my favorite instrument of sound is the guitar. And I believe it's a very sensual looking instrument. It looks like the shape of a woman's body, and they're very beautiful. And the craft that goes into them, that the luthiers put in hours and hours of work to make these incredible instruments, I felt needed to be celebrated. And everyone sees the mug shots of guitars. You can open up a guitar magazine or look online and you see a full photograph of a guitar with clinical lighting, and I wanted my imagery to show the soul of the guitar and to really take a portrait that would show the guitar as it personified the player because of the marks that are left behind by the actual player. And I just have been driven to do it, and I've done it over this long period of time because, of course, I had jobs in between. I worked for the Eastman Kodak company for 10 years, and then when I left the company, I then got into the yoga business, and I opened 2 yoga studios. So it took a long time because I had to earn a living in between creating this book. You said you worked for Kodak. Did you do any photography for them, or did you have another position? I worked as a technical sales representative for Kodak. So while I was not a photographer for Kodak, I had to understand photographers' products because I was selling film, paper, and chemistry to photographers and to photo labs. So I would be testing films all of the time and shooting the films that I needed to explain to photographers how to use. So I wanted to have something interesting to photograph, and the guitar ended up being that subject matter. So I photographed, this book actually is quite interesting in that it is a historical document of the last films that Kodak ever made for Kodak Professional, and then it transitions into digital because it was over such a long span of time that the book was created.
Did you contribute some or all of the photographs for this book?
All of the photographs.
All of
This
them.
is all of my photography, yes. And I did all the writing.
They're beautifully done.
Thank
The
you.
lighting is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Were there anything that went on behind the scenes that turned out to be kind of extraordinary, intimidating, or very special? Something that kind of sticks out in your memory? Rather than
Yes.
just a simple interview and the taking of a picture?
Well, so many of the shoots. I mean, they are all very special moments for me, all of them. But one that really stands out is when I had the opportunity to photograph Roger Waters' bass guitar. And I happened to be in England, and I was photographing Jimmy Page's guitar there, and Brian Robert Robertson and Pearl Thompson's. And I got the call that I got approved to photograph Roger Waters' guitar, and I was so happy. And I ended up getting a plane ticket from London to Athens, Greece, where he was performing The Wall. And when I arrived, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had worked for Kodak for the Olympics in Athens. I was there for the entire Olympics in Athens. And so I was familiar with the buildings because it was in one of the Olympic halls where the concert was being held. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was very hot outside. It was in July of 2009, and there was a long lineup already waiting outside for fans waiting to get in to the concert. But of course, sound check had only just started. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was amazing how all these fans were already waiting at that early, because there was seating, limited seating, and it was a big standing room only venue. So we went in and we got to sit there for the whole sound check, and Roger Waters was on stage, and every city that they went to, they had the children's choir of that city that would perform within the concert. So the children were all on stage, and Roger was there, and the films were rolling in the background, and he was in 100% command of the stage and sound check. It was very impressive because he doesn't have to do that. He can have a lot of other people, his guitar techs, doing his sound check predominantly. But he did his entire sound check himself. And then at the end, I was invited back to come and photograph the guitar. And I didn't know where I was going to get to photograph the guitar. And it turned out that it was directly underneath the wall that crumbles, that is built and crumbles throughout the duration of this magnificent show, one of the world's greatest shows ever. And I got to photograph Roger Waters' bass right after sound check, still warm from his sound check, directly underneath the wall, standing on top of one of the road crew cases. And my lighting equipment, I had come from England. The plugs did not work in the Greek power.
You did your own lighting?
I did my own lighting, and my plugs didn't work. So here I was, ready to do the shoot, and my plugs didn't work. So I ended up photographing his bass with a single light bulb underneath the wall. And the photographs came out beautiful. They're very moody, and it's kind of what the Floyd music is. It's very, very moody sounding. So I'm very pleased with the way the images came out.
Where did you study photography?
I studied at Brevard Community College in Florida, in Cocoa, Florida.
It's amazing. Was there anybody in particular that was quite rude? You don't have to mention the name, but kind of a circumstance that you wish you hadn't involved yourself in?
You know, there's no circumstance that I wish I had not involved myself in. I was always very, very pleased to be able to gain access to every guitar that I photographed. There was one particular artist that was pretty grumpy. But it's okay. You know, it's just people's personalities come out, and they don't have much time, or they're busy, and even they may say yes to something, but they don't really understand what it's for. And so then when the moment comes, they're like, what do I have to do this for? But they've agreed to it, so they're doing it. And but no one was really particularly, like, once we were on the scene, made me feel uncomfortable or anything. You just have to be very professional and get in and get out, get your job done. And
So you went to concerts as well as into private settings, quiet
Sure.
settings, to do the photography.
yeah, a lot of these shots were taken right before concerts. So typically, a good time to do it is either before a sound check or after a sound check. So most of the times it's after sound check, so the guitars are all ready to go for the show. And then I do the shot, and then go have dinner, and then come back for the show.
Do the musicians usually have one particular guitar that they play most of all, that's kind of their signature guitar?
Yes, in fact, when I request to photograph their guitars, I always ask for their number one guitar.
Okay.
So they usually have one that's their go-to guitar. But they often change guitars throughout the night as well.
I guess depending on the music they're playing.
Yeah, depending on the song, sure, they switch out their guitars a lot. You know, like Rick Nielsen, for example, he plays many different guitars throughout the night, and then, you know, sometimes they play the same guitar the whole night long. So, you know, Willie Nelson, for example, he plays his one guitar, his Martin classical guitar named Trigger, that he's had for years and years, and it's so worn that it's got a big hole in it. And that's his guitar. He carries that guitar on and off the stage himself. It stays with him.
Well, this is very exciting. I'm so glad that you're here. And if you don't mind, and if the audience will stay with us, we'll take a very quick break, come back to Lisa S. Johnson, and go into more guitars and more music and more photography. Stay with us for just a few moments.
Keep your family safe. Improve your gas mileage. Extend the life of your tires. How do you do it? It's easy. Just check it. Your tire pressure, that is. Keeping your tires properly inflated protects the environment, gives you peace of mind, and saves you money for more important things. So just check it once a month. A message from Cal Recycle.
Hello, everyone. We're back to Author's Night with Lisa S. Johnson and her phenomenal book, 108 Rockstar Guitars. Your life sounds extraordinarily exciting. You're always on the go, glamorous places, great personalities, beautiful music. How does your life compare now to what you started out? Were you always leading a very full life of this level?
I've always led a pretty full life. When I was 20 years old, living in northern Canada, I decided I was going to travel around the world by myself, and I worked 3 jobs and saved up all my money, and I went on a trip to Europe and went all across Europe and down to South Africa on my own. I turned 20.
South Africa? Mm-hmm. What year was that?
That was in 1984.
Well, that was before Rodriguez.
Yes, that's right.
We went to see the Rodriguez concert.
I did
Radio
too.
City
He's
Music Hall.
fantastic, yeah. Oh, that's great that you got to see him. It was in New York recently. I missed the show. I was in New York and I didn't get to see the show, but I saw him in Los Angeles at the Orpheum Theater last year, and what a story.
What a phenomenal story. Very recondite, odd personality.
He's one guitar I'd like to photograph now, you know, now that we all know about him.
Well, he's just a living, that's how we started out the show. Everybody's screaming and cheering for him. He says, well, I want to be treated just like an everyday living legend. And he's very humble.
Yes.
And very gracious. And people who don't know him really should look him up.
I agree.
Sixto Rodriguez.
Yes, yep. He's an incredible human being.
Okay, so you still have an exciting life.
Yes, I traveled, and then I came back, and I ended up deciding to go to school for photography when I did that. And then I worked in a commercial photo lab that was kind of an underground photo lab in Florida, and I had a secret clearance to work there because all the work we did was for the aerospace companies, and that was very exciting. And because we used so much film and paper, we had a Kodak rep, and I got to know my Kodak rep. And after a while, I thought, what am I going to do with this? Maybe I should, try to get a job with Kodak. And she ended up helping me, and I ended up going to work for, at that time, was a Fortune 200 company. Sadly, Kodak is nowhere close to that anymore, but it was a really glamorous and prestigious company to work for, and I loved all my days working for the Eastman Kodak Company. And the clients that I was able to work with were just the top photographers in the world in New York City, very inspirational. And I loved that job. But then it got very difficult in latter days working for Kodak, and I decided to pursue yoga, and I became a yoga teacher. And I opened 2 yoga studios in Las Vegas. But all the while I had started this project on the side, and I was working on it. And in Las Vegas, every band comes through Vegas at one point or another. Especially rock bands come through, and having grown up on classic rock, I gravitated towards requesting the classic rock guitar guys as they came through Vegas. So I would teach a yoga class, and then I'd run out and go photograph a guitar, and I did that for many years. And then finally I decided to sell my yoga studios and work on this project full time, because I'd garnered enough photographs for a book, and I wanted to just get a few more guitars in it that needed to be in there, like Jimmy Page, for example, and Roger Waters, and just some other amazing players that I got in the last days, and really put this forth as something that I wanted to do as a career. So it has been very exciting, and the concerts that I've been able to go to and the people that I've met have really enriched my life. I've had the ride of my life, truly, putting this book together.
And you divide your time between Vegas and Malibu. That's
right, yeah. My primary residence is Las Vegas, and then I spend a lot of time here in Malibu too. Probably half and half. Mm-hmm. I love it here.
That's a nice life. Is there anyone who didn't make the cut?
Oh boy, you mean that I had to edit out, or?
Well, who maybe wanted to become part of your book, or you didn't feel was up there with the rest of them, or that you, yes, like you say, had to get to 108. Why did you choose 108?
Well, I chose 108 because I am a yogi, and the number 108 is very significant in Buddhism and in Hindi philosophy. It's so significant that you can even go to Google and Google the number 108, and there's an entire Wikipedia explaining the number 108. It's a very cosmic number, and when the Indians created the prayer bead, there are 108 beads on it. And when the Christian Crusaders went to India 3,000 years ago, that was how they came up with, when they went back to Europe, they brought back the mala and created the rosary. And there are many, many things about the number 108, but just to give you one quick example, when you total the numbers, 108, you get the number 9. And in numerology, the number 9 symbolizes endings and beginnings, transformation. And within the 9 are 3 threes, 3 plus 3 plus 3. So you have the 3 trinities, body, mind, soul, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and the Hindi trinity, which is Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the sustainer, and Shiva, the destroyer and transformer. So the number 108 is a fully loaded number, and as a yogi and as a music lover, I wanted my book to have a cosmic significance, because it's a very divine number, and the music that we hear that's moved us so much all of our lives, people that are music lovers, and music brings the world together. It's a universal language, that I wanted my book to have a divine purpose, and it is to be able to even present this number to the world, because the number 108 embodies all of us. Even in Chinese medicine, there's 108 pressure points in the body. So it's just a way to be able to introduce this as a yogi to the world. And people always ask that question, why 108? When they look at the book, they're drawn to it because of that number too. They go 108, what is that? And then they get to find out. So it brings a little bit of cosmic powder dust.
And the
to
color
them.
purple, you include in the package, in the book cover, cover for the book, a purple scarf. Why
Yes.
purple?
Well, purple is also a divine color as well. And for me, you know, the third eye, this is the color of the sixth chakra as well, is purple. So this is also a very divine color. And this scarf actually does come in the deluxe book. This is the limited edition scarf. There were only 500.
Why a scarf?
Well, why a scarf? A good question. Because most photographers, when they come out with a deluxe book, they put a signed print in the deluxe book. And this is a rock and roll book. And every rock and roller likes their scarves. So I thought, let's put a scarf in there. And this, the cover of the book is actually the art on the scarf. So you have the number 108, and when you wear it, you're embodied by that cosmic number as well. So everything has to have a meaning, a cosmic meaning. That's what makes it worthwhile to do something where there's depth to it.
Some people did have to be cut, left on the cutting room
Well,
floor, as they say.
Unfortunately, a few people did get cut, but only because of the genre that they were in. Because, you see, when I first started photographing guitars, I photographed every genre. I grew up listening to country music and jazz music and rock and roll music and country, jazz, blues. And so I photographed all these kinds of players, B.B. King, John Lee Hooker, a lot of country players, jazz players, Howard Alden, Bucky Pizzarelli, lots of guys. But because I grew up more on, as I grew up, classic rock was my mainstay. So as the request process continued over these 17 years, I gravitated more towards rock requests, rock guitarists. So I ended up with a lot more rock guys. And then in the end, when I was ready to put a book together, I thought, you know, I could put them all genres in one book, or I could do 4 different books. I could do a rock book, a country book, a jazz book, a blues book. And so I decided to do that instead. So this book is predominantly, it's all rock, star guitars. And I had to hold back a lot of these amazing shots that I have of blues and country and jazz guitarists. But you'll get to see those in subsequent books.
And the foreword is by Les Paul.
Yes.
How did you meet Les Paul? Now he
Such a blessing.
he played in New York at that
Iridium Room.
And we had, as I mentioned to you before the interview, we had gone to see him there.
Yeah.
And he was so elderly, at least looked to me at that time, maybe not too well. And I wondered, how can that man play the guitar when he was stumbling to tune it? And I wondered if his hands were perhaps too gnarled. But the minute he put that guitar in his hand and the lights dimmed, it was perfection.
Yes.
How did you meet him?
Well, again, I had started photographing guitars working for Kodak while I was working for Kodak in Memphis, Tennessee. And shortly after I had stumbled upon this opportunity to photograph guitars for someone, Kodak transferred me to New York City. And I fell in love with photographing guitars from the first guitar I ever photographed, and knew I wanted to continue to photograph guitars. So when Kodak transferred me to New York, I thought I may as well try to photograph famous guitars, because this is New York. Every famous guitar comes through this town. So I looked in the Time Out magazine and was keeping an eye of who's coming through town, and I started to notice Les Paul plays every Monday night at the Iridium Room, 2 sets. So I thought, I'm going to go down there and see if I can photograph his guitar. And I went by myself. I would always go by myself. And at that time, in those days, the Iridium Room was up by Lincoln Center, and they had a little bar stool area in the back. And I would go and sit there every Monday night and sit for both sets. And Paul Nowinski was the stand-up bass player at that time in the trio. And he came over to the bar one night to get a drink, and I introduced myself to him. And I showed him some pictures that I had taken of other guitars, not famous ones, but ones that I'd been taking photos of in Memphis. And I said, you know, I'm eventually going to put a book together, and do you think that Les would let me photograph his guitar? And he said, well, let me ask. And he went back, and he came back again a little while later, and he said, yeah, not a problem. Come on. So when Les would take his break in between the two sets, he would just leave his guitar. He had a stool, you know, just the bar stool, it's a round bar stool, and he left his guitar laying right on top of it. And I photographed his guitar. I didn't even touch it. I just had so much respect and reverence for his guitar and for his instrument that I photographed it right there on that stool. And I also photographed that evening Paul Nowinski's fiddle bass and Lou Paulo's guitar, who was Les's rhythm guitar player for 45 years and still leads the Les Paul Trio today. And so that was it. And then I would still go every Monday night and visit Les, and I would get back into the green room and I delivered prints to Les. And at the time I was shooting black and white film and hand coloring my prints. And so subsequent times I'd come in there and he'd say, oh, there's that girl who does that guitar art. And it was just wonderful that he saw my work as art, because that's how I saw it too. Yes, he was. And he, at the end of the night, even after the end of the last set, he would stay until everyone was satisfied that they'd gotten whatever they brought signed and autographed by him. He was tireless. And how did he do it? I think he had to. It was what kept him alive. He loved his Monday nights. And that was his time. He lived for that night. And we're so lucky that he did. And I'm very blessed to have been able to know him and spend as much time with him as I did. And the last time I sat with Les, I'm so happy. I went and I had a stack of prints, because it was 12 years at that point into the project. And I sat with him and I said, Les, remember when I photographed your guitar 12 years ago? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, look how many guitars I've photographed since then. Look, here's Zakk Wylde's Les Paul. Here's Keith Richards' Les Paul. Here's Slash's Les Paul. And he was so happy with the pictures. And he said, you know, your guitar pictures are going to inspire young kids to buy guitars, because they're going to want to personalize them, like they see their guitar hero as personalize theirs. And so he was really pleased with that, because he loved to have kids come up and play on stage with him as often as he could. And so I said that same sitting, I said, you know, I need someone to write the foreword for my book, and you're their hero. Would you consider it? And he said, well, I see what you're saying. He said, why don't you call my manager and see what we can set up? I said, I'm going to call him tomorrow because I don't want you to forget. And he said, I won't forget. And he didn't. And I feel just so honored that he did that for me.
Well, folks, I'm going to have to just put us on hold for just one more minute or two, so stay with us. There's many more stories to tell and guitars to talk about with Lisa S. Johnson and her book. So we'll be right back in a few moments to Author's Night.
Global warming is a problem.
Sound the alarm!
We think it's an important thing to save energy, to protect the environment, to protect the future.
Every who in Whoville makes a difference.
We need everyone!
Together, we can all make a difference.
Save energy with Energy Star, and then you can be
Part of the solution.
Yeah!
Go to EnergyStar.gov/kids to see what else you can do.
We're back with Lisa S. Johnson and 108 Rockstar Guitars. We left Les Paul and his guitar, and as you look through the book, there's just so many different kinds of guitars. When I first got a guitar, I thought there was just a guitar. But when you go to pick a guitar, it's like each guitar has its own soul. Mm-hmm. Each guitar sounds so different from the other guitar next to it. I guess, what does it depend on? What kind of wood do they use?
Oh, well, there's so many different kinds of woods that are used. You know, you'll see a quilted maple is used in one of Phil Collins' guitars in here. There's mahogany is used. I'm not really the wood expert of guitars, but I know that the woods, you know, there's pine top guitars, and they all create a different sound. there's a band that I love that's not a rock band, but I love them so much, and the name is called Dead Can Dance is the name of this band. And the reason that they called themselves that is because you make instruments out of wood, dead wood, or hides of animals. You create a drum, horsehair, created strings.
I've never known
And
horsehair.
Horsehair has been used to make strings. And so you create from something that's dead, that was once living, you create music and you make it dance again. Dead Can Dance. Such a great
And then
name
the
of a band.
instrument becomes alive. I mean,
Yes, and they play, this particular band plays a lot of very exotic instruments, and you know, it's the same with guitars. It's made out of wood, and okay, you've got your steel strings in there, or your plastic strings, but it's really, you know, taking a wood that was once living, that is dead, that they create a sound from. So it's quite an interesting concept.
how do people maintain guitars? Do they oil them? Do they clean them? What do they do? I never really did much except dust it.
Well, there are oils involved in them for sure. It's kind of fun for me when I show up to do a shoot, the guitar tech or the guitarist gets a cloth out and they start wiping it down and they don't want fingerprints and stuff on it. And I'm like, just leave it the way it is. I want it to be authentically how you left it. And often those things don't show up in the picture anyway. So, but it's very charming to see them want to wipe down their guitar and make sure it's all perfect before it's photographed. But you know, there's a lot of maintenance that does go into guitars, and that's why many of these guys, guitarists, have guitar techs, and the guitar techs take care of their guitars for them.
And you say you are now taking guitar lessons.
Yes, I have a fantastic teacher that comes out to my house, and
What kind of a guitar do you have?
I'm learning on an acoustic guitar. It's a Gibson B25.
Gibson.
Yeah, it's a little guitar. I'm small, so I have my dad's Gibson J160E, which is the guitar that John Lennon made famous. And I just couldn't, it has those steel strings on them, and it's a jumbo guitar, and I just couldn't get my hand wrapped around the neck or my body around the body.
And then I guess the bass guitar is so large that would be quite difficult to play.
Yeah, I haven't attempted that. Yeah, I'm learning on my little B25, and I love that guitar, and it's a beautiful sound.
Do you sing and play?
I do sing, yeah. I grew up in a very musical family. My father played multi-instruments, and my mother has a beautiful voice, and she could have been a star. She just, I guess, didn't have the backing when she was growing up to make it happen, but she has a wonderful voice, and she still sings today. She sings at the opening of hockey games in Canada, the national anthem, and she also sings in nursing homes and all around her town in little gigs. And it's wonderful. It gives her something to do in her retirement years. But I learned a lot of songs. A lot of the songs that my mother would sing growing up, I learned to sing those songs with her. And I sing a lot of my grandmother's songs. Both of my grandmothers had little songs that they would sing that are from the early 1900s. You can't even find these songs anymore, and I feel honored that my grandparents taught me those songs. So it is my hope that one day, or it's not my hope, it's one of my next goals, is to be able to sing and play those songs on the guitar.
Professionally?
Not professionally. I will be happy if I can be proficient at playing the guitar and singing some songs for my dad and my mom and for my family. That'll make
It's
me
like
happy.
reading. You can do it by yourself for hours.
Yes, exactly. And also, it would be nice that when I meet some of these artists, if I could play a few riffs with them, maybe
That's
they
true.
can all give me a little lesson.
Where can one purchase the book? I mean, it's a phenomenal book to keep for oneself, resource book as well as beautiful photographs and historically very good.
Well, the easiest place to buy it nowadays is, guess where? Amazon.com.
Yes.
They are so well equipped to stock and to ship out anywhere in the United States. You can have it the next day. I had a huge quantity that I had, and I was selling them on my website so you could get a signed edition, but I've completely sold out. And Amazon actually sold out of their stock as well, but they're getting restocked as we speak, so they will be shipping in time for Christmas, still this year. So Amazon.com is the place, and then it's also in Barnes & Noble, and select Barnes & Nobles. It's just getting out now, so it will be everywhere in all bookstores.
I'd like to
soon.
show the audience the book. I mean, it's an embossed leather cover, comes with a beautiful box.
This is actually the limited edition box. So there were only 540 of this box made, and that comes with this scarf. 108 of these went directly to the artists themselves. So there are only 432
Collector items.
of the collector's box available for sale, and a lot of them have already sold. So that's the only way you can get this scarf, is if you buy the limited edition. Inside the box comes the scarf, and you have this, the scarf is in the bottom, and there's a purple velvet ribbon that holds the book in. So the book sits in here. So the book is actually the same, but what you get is the collector's box and the scarf. Or you can just, this is the regular edition. This is the same book that does come in here. But this book inside the collector's box is a signed edition, signed and numbered. So you would get the exact same book that all of the artists got. They got the first 108. So the book started at edition 109 that's available to the public. And then there's 2,500 additional regular books like this. So it's a red leatherette, and it's very cosmic because we have the number 108 on the front, and because 108 totals 9, we have the lotus flower because I'm the yogi, and there's 9 lotus flower petals, and then there's 9 guitar headstocks, and there's 27 guitar headstocks that surround it. So it's all an embodiment of this number 9. And in the back of the book, there is a 16-page zine that comes with the book that's called The Inspiration Behind 108 Rockstar Guitars, and it's kind of like the making of the book, little extra. And then every guitar book comes with 1 guitar pick. And there are 3 designs. This one is the lotus flower design. You don't know which one you're going to get, but there are 3 different designs, and each book comes with 1. So these are highly collectible. And the design of the pick matches the book. So you have the lotus flower guitar pick, and then there's a guitar pick that looks like an acoustic headstock, and then there's a guitar pick that looks like the electric guitar headstock. So it's a highly collectible item, and it just makes it fun. Every guitar book should come with a guitar pick, don't you think?
I think so. But what is next for you? You spent so many years and created a magnificent product. Is there another book?
Yes, there is. There can easily be a second edition of 108 more Rockstar guitars. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I already have started a country book, a blues book, and a jazz book as well. So I have my work cut out for me.
Well, I look forward to reading it, and I want to thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I look forward to reading your new book because I'll be looking for Sugar Man. And I want to extend my appreciation to the Calabasas Library for hosting us, the Media Operations Department for taping us, and the City of Calabasas for allowing us and inviting us to be here. And thanking you, our television audience, for coming and watching our Authors Night.